Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, Study with Hadil. In this lesson, we're going to review comparative and superlative adjectives and look at some common mistakes that you might be making with them. We'll end the lesson with an exercise so you can check your understanding. By the end of the video, you will have a better idea of how to use comparative and superlative adjectives. Let's begin. I just wanted to remind you about what a noun is and an adjective is before we begin. A noun is a person, a place, or a thing. So, for example, your phone is a noun because it's a thing. I'm a person. My name is Hadil. I'm also a noun. Right now, we are in a classroom. A classroom is a place, so it's a noun. An adjective, it's a word that describes a noun. They can give us information such as the size or age of a noun. Adjectives can also tell us someone's opinion or describe how someone is feeling. So a lot of times we like to compare things. In English, when we compare things, we need to use comparative adjectives. So, what are comparative adjectives? They are words we use when we are comparing different things or different places. So, let's look a little bit more into this. Comparative adjectives are used to compare two people, places, or things. They tell us how one noun is different from the other. The most common sentence for comparative adjectives in English is subject plus verb plus comparative adjective plus then plus the object. Here are some examples. Sally is younger than Katie. For the first sentence, there's two sides, Sally and Katie. And we compare Sally's age to Katie's age. And same thing for the other sentences. My house is bigger than hers. Your horse is better than hers. Anna and Ashley are both my friends, but I like Anna better. In these four sentences, we compare two things, two people, or two places. So, of course, we'll use the comparative adjectives. But if we want to compare one thing in a group with all of the other things, we can't use the comparative. We should use the superlative. So, what are superlative adjectives? Superlative adjectives are used to compare three or more people, places, or things. They tell us how one is different from the others. The most common sentence for superlative adjectives in English is noun, which is the subject, plus verb, plus the, plus superlative adjectives, plus object, which is a noun. Examples. My house is the largest one on our neighborhood. For the first sentence, there's two sides, my house and the other houses in the neighborhood. And we compare my house's size to the other houses. Same thing for the other examples. Your horse runs the fastest. Jupiter is the biggest planet in our solar system. In the sentences, we compare one thing in a group with all of the other things. So, of course, we'll use the superlative adjectives. How to form regular, comparative, and superlative adjectives. In English, words are divided into monosyllable words and multisyllable words. Monosyllable words are words with one syllable. Example, car, far, small, etc. Multisyllable words are words with two syllables or more. Example, beautiful, colorful. So we have some rules when it comes to using comparative and superlative adjectives. When an adjective is one syllable, we add er to it when we want to use it to compare, and est for the superlative. So let's look at some examples of this because it's sort of hard to understand unless you actually see what I'm talking about. Simple in the comparative becomes simpler, in the superlative becomes simplest. High in the comparative becomes higher, in the superlative becomes highest. That means if the adjective is one syllable, we add er or est. Let's do some more practice and talk about different adjectives that are more than one syllable and what we should do. So we talked about how you can add er or est to short adjectives. What about with longer adjectives? Adjectives that are two syllables or more. For example, colorful. There's three syllables. Colorful. So when we have longer adjectives that are more than one syllable, we put more before the comparative adjectives and most before the superlative adjectives. Example, important in the comparative becomes more important. In the superlative becomes most important. Expensive in the comparative becomes more expensive. In the superlative becomes most expensive. But you should pay attention. For some two-syllable adjectives, we also put more and most instead of adding er and est to the end of the adjective. Example, tilted. So here we have two syllables, tilted. But we put more before the comparative adjective and most before the superlative adjective. Tangled, it's an adjective with two syllables. Tangled, tangled. But also we put more before the comparative adjective and most before the superlative adjective. So now let's look at spelling because it is also important when it comes to comparative and superlative adjectives. We've talked about when to use er and est and when to use more and most. So now we're going to talk a little bit about the spelling. When we are using comparative and superlative adjectives, we need to pay attention to vowels and consonants. So, when we have consonant, vowel, consonant, that means CVC, you need to double up the last letter. But if you have something different, you don't need to add anything. Let's look at some examples. Big, in the comparative becomes bigger, in the superlative becomes biggest. Sad, in the comparative becomes sadder, in the superlative becomes saddest. Fat, in the comparative becomes fatter, in the superlative becomes fattest. So here, when we have CVC, we double the last letter. Big, we double J. Sad, we double D. Fat, we double T. So now, let's look at one other spelling rule. If an adjective ends by Y, so we have heavy, happy, busy, etc. When we add er to the end of the adjective, we need to change the y into an I. So we have, for example, happy, the y becomes an I and we add er. Happy, in the comparative becomes happier, in the superlative becomes happiest. Same thing for the adjective busy. The y becomes I and we add er. Busy, in the comparative becomes busier, in the superlative becomes busiest. So now, after we've talked about some rules to form regular comparative and superlative adjectives for short and long adjectives and their spelling rules, we should know some irregular comparative and superlative adjectives. These very common adjectives have completely irregular comparative and superlative forms. The adjective good in the comparative becomes better, in the superlative becomes best. Bad in the comparative becomes worse, in the superlative becomes worst. Little in the comparative becomes less, in the superlative becomes less. Much in the comparative becomes more, in the superlative becomes must. Far in the comparative becomes farther or further, in the superlative becomes furthest or farthest. Now, I suggest for you an exercise to check your understanding. First, look and write. The lion is the giraffe, but the cheetah is. For the first sentence, we should use the adjective fast. The lion is the giraffe. Here we compare the lion and the giraffe, so we'll use the comparative. But the cheetah is. Here we compare the cheetah with the other animals, so we'll use the superlative. To form the comparative and superlative of a monosyllable adjective, we should add er to the end of the comparative adjective and est for the superlative adjective. So the answer will be, the lion is faster than the giraffe, but the cheetah is the fastest. The lion is faster than the giraffe, but the cheetah is the fastest. For the second sentence, the school is the hospital, and we should use the adjective far. Here we compare the school and the hospital, so we'll use the comparative, and the answer will be, the school is farther than the hospital. For the third sentence, Fred is student, and the adjective is good. Here we compare Fred with the other students, so we'll use the superlative. And good, it's an irregular adjective, so the answer will be, Fred is the best student. For the fourth sentence, a flower is, then a leaf, and the adjective is beautiful. Beautiful, it's a multisyllable adjective, so we'll put more before the adjective, because here we'll use the comparative. A flower is more beautiful than a leaf. The nail is river in the world. Here we compare the nail with the other rivers in the world, so we'll use the superlative. Long, it's a monosyllable adjective, so we'll add er to the end of the comparative adjective and est for the superlative. Here we'll say, the Nile is the longest river in the world. For the last sentence, Barry is in the classroom. And we have the adjective noisy. This adjective ends by Y, so we'll change the Y into an I and add EST because we'll use the superlative because we compare Barry with the other students in the classroom. So the answer will be Barry is the noisiest in the classroom. Our video is finished. I hope you all enjoy it. If you have any questions, don't forget to leave them down below in the comment section. See you soon. Bye.